Wow, crazy events. I'd have to say one of the crazier, cooler ones that we've done. We got two. I'll tell you about one. Was the Chili Bowl. I had never been to the Chili Bowl. I was probably in my, well, I guess I'd have had to been somewhere around 30 years old because I'm 51 and this will be my 20th Chili Bowl. So I'm going to say I was probably around 30. And we had introduced this little device. Nobody had ever seen them before in the dirt racing world, really in the racing world at all, called a receiver. And it's a one-way communication device. Dirt guys know all about it now, but I met a guy named Ken Perkle with those things down at Daytona along about 2002, 3, 4. I met him at RPM in Daytona. We were still having it there. Back then, we were still having it at the Hilton. And I'd met Ken as a little one-way device. And anyway, I had this great idea to work for Race Control. We wound up getting fixed up with INEX and sold them a whole bunch of them, and now everybody runs them nationwide. It's a cool little deal. But anyway, I was at RPM in Reno, Nevada, and it's at a big casino out there, and everybody's kind of doing their stuff, you know, and people are coming by, and tracks are taking information about it, and some guys are buying them. A few people knew about them. I remember talking to Brett Root with IMCA, and man, he looked at it and wasn't really interested, but, you know, thought it was a cool idea. But these two old guys came by, man, like 3 or 4 times. And, you know, I talked to them, and they were super nice, and I didn't really know who they were, you know. And but anyway, they came by 3 or 4 times and asked me a bunch of questions about them. So that night, I went and got me some dinner, you know, and I was out on the casino floor. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I was with... I may have been with Boz, who actually ended up going to work for Receiver years later. But he was selling racetrack services or something. There was all kinds of racetrack stuff there. But we were out on the floor and we were playing craps and throwing dice, you know. And these two old guys come by and they're like, "Hey, we got a question. How much would you charge us to bring 300 of those little radios to our event and rent them to our guys?" And I said, let me make sure I understand this right. You want me to bring 300 of these devices to your event and rent them, and you're going to pay me to come? Yeah, absolutely. I said, well, where's your event at? And they said, Tulsa, Oklahoma. I said, okay. I said, when is your event? And he said, it's in January. Man, I'm immediately thinking, man, I'm going to freeze to death in Oklahoma in January. And I said, man, let me do some math on this and come by the booth tomorrow morning. So, you know, I got back to the room, did a little math, and kind of figured out what I needed or whatever. And they came by the booth the next morning. I said, how in the world are you guys going to run a midget race in Tulsa, Oklahoma in January? Man, it could snow, it could rain, we could have all kinds of problems. And they said, well, it's inside. I said, you got a race inside? He goes, yeah, we've been doing it since 1987. And I was like, really? And he said, have you never been to our event before? I said, no, sir. And it was Lanny Edwards. And I said, what's the name of your event? He said, it's the Chili Bowl. I was like, oh, okay. Now, I ain't going to lie. I still really didn't know what the Chili Bowl was. The only thing I remember about the Chili Bowl is reading in Stock Car magazine. They had interviewed Ken Schrader one time about all the racing endeavors he had done. And I remember him saying the Chili Bowl is a hell of a place. So as soon as they told me it was the Chili Bowl, all I knew is Kenny Schrader said it was a hell of a place. So don't know much about it, don't know the details. And they said, hey, we'll pay you X number of dollars to bring them out, take care of your hotel, your food, the whole deal. We really want to get these things going. So I was like, all right. So I drive out to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and it's a little over 1,000 miles from my shop to Tulsa, and get out there and get all set up, you know. And man, I'm gonna tell you, overall, the drivers were pissed. They did not want to do this deal. Nobody wanted to run them. About got into a fight with PJ Jones over this thing. Casey Kane rented. Now you could either rent the thing for the week for $75 or buy it for $100. Casey Kane rented a device from me and wrote me a check. I was blown away. And at the time, Kane was still running Cup, so apparently they weren't paying as good as we thought. But I think Stewart ran that year, and J.J. Yaley, PJ was there. Man, there were some sluggers there, you know. So these guys all had to get these devices. Well, they discovered after the first or second day that a lot of guys weren't using them, even though they had rented them. So now they put me in charge of policing the ramp. And if you've ever seen or you've watched the Chili Bowl or you've been to the Chili Bowl, it's where everybody goes down. So I'm walking through there, and they are making them show me their device. Now, I don't know these guys. These guys don't know me. So right now I'm the devil because nobody wants to run this device. So finally, Lanny got a hold of the microphone in the pits and told them if they didn't run it, they couldn't race, and he didn't care if they packed up and they went home. But I remember getting there to the event, and Lanny came and picked me up on the golf cart, and he says, "Come on, I'm going to give you a tour of the place." Man, this thing's 11 acres, clear span, under one roof, no poles. There's an upper level and a lower level. And, man, they have hauled in about 900 loads of dirt, and they have made the coolest little dirt track you've ever seen. And I remember Lanny said, he pulls me down the track, he says, you have any idea how old this dirt is? I said, Lanny, I don't really know. I said, it really depends on you if you're a pre-evolutionist or not and all that. And he looked at me and he said, I mean, how long we've been using it? I said, oh, no, sir. He said, 1987, keep it in a warehouse across town. So he talks about the process, introduces me to Emmett, introduces me to Fuzzy. Through that, I ended up meeting Tom and Steve and Stacy and Brian and Blake, who we sponsor now, and Brandon and, man, the whole Hahn family. And they were just unbelievably welcoming, you know. We went back up to the front, and I met Lanny and Lanny Ross, and I met Beverly, and I mean the whole Edwards clan. And, man, these people are just like, they're unbelievable nice. And Don Swope, God rest his soul, man, he was still running the compound out back. They were feeding me every day, and I had known Lasowski for a little while, and, man, he's a bit of a cut-up, and we had a big time with Danny out there. So it was just a lot of fun, man. We rented these devices out, and to this day, they still run the receiver. Still made some great relationships out there, lots of good friends. One of our best reps came from the Chili Bowl, and then we started doing the Tulsa Shootout also, which is a couple weeks before. Same track, smaller cars, way more of them. There's about 1,000 of those things out there. It's a pretty cool deal. But, man, Tulsa has been real good to us. We've had a lot of fun out there, met a lot of good friends, lots of great racing. But I'd say the Chili Bowl, probably one of the top events that we do every year. And if you guys have never been, you definitely need to make it to the Chili Bowl at least one time in your life. You won't be sorry. And unfortunately, Lanny's no longer with us, and Miss Beverly and Fuzzy, man, they've all gone to that big racetrack in the sky. But Emmett's still in there putting that thing on with his kids, and Miss Donna and Steve and Tom, and, man, they're in there doing a great job. So, and you guys be proud to come if you can make it to the Chili Bowl in January. You guys need to come. We do a contest every year too, so keep that in mind. You might be able to win that contest and come out as a guest of Velocita. So that's probably one of the more fun events that we've done. Definitely the Chili Bowl.